Are you thinking about buying a house in East Tennessee, but you can't actually be in East Tennessee in person to buy the house? AKA, maybe you are considering buying a house sight unseen. Now, you may be having a visceral reaction like, I would never do that. So that's probably not for you. But if this is something you've thought about and maybe you've actually done it before already, but now you want to do it in East Tennessee, I help people with this all the time. So today we're going to talk about the steps to make it happen for you to get your house in the East Tennessee, Knoxville area. Let's get started. All right, so I'm Haley Jones. As you know, thank you for your time. I'm excited to go over this process with you. And like I said, a lot of people will be like, I would never buy a house sight unseen, which I totally get. You know yourself, it wouldn't work for you. All good. That being said, this actually happens a lot, like a lot. Like probably so far this year, I've helped, I know 3 in the past 2 weeks. I'm like trying to add them up in my brain. But that being said, it happens often. And I want to go over the steps with you. And so I also just want to acknowledge, like, people do this all the time. It's not unheard of. It happens. You just have to be very strategic and decisive, obviously. So let's talk about exactly what this process looks like. So the first 3 steps I'm going to go over with you, they're kind of loose. Okay, so not any particular order, but these are definitely things you want to have done before you get like serious. And the third one means you're super serious. So first of all, I'll say this: set your goal, set your timeline. When are you wanting to move? Do you need to sell in order to buy? If you need to sell in order to buy, have you talked with an agent where you are? Do you need help finding an agent? Like, what does that look like? Where are you in terms of your current situation? And then also acknowledging, like, maybe you're moving to Knoxville or East Tennessee because of a job. Well, if your start date is June 1, are you trying to be in your house 2 weeks before you start? Are you okay to be in your house the day you start? What does that look like? What's the logistics of moving? So set your ideal scenario when it comes to your actual timeline. Get very clear on what would be ideal, and then we work towards that ideal. Now, you can always reach out to an agent at this point, an agent that you trust. Maybe that's me, maybe that's someone else, but an agent can help you with this timeline situation, especially if you are going to need to sell a home. It's often great if the agent you're working with to sell your house and the agent you're working with to buy kind of can work in conjunction to help you stay on track and reach your timeline goal. So that's just something to keep in mind. So that's number 1, set your plan, set your goal, set your timeline. Number 2, narrow down your location. So I've had a combination of people that have moved to the Knoxville area. Some were very specific. They knew that, for example, they were going to start working at UT, on campus near downtown. Some just wanted an East Tennessee property with an acre. So those are very different things. If you are going to be working, as an example, at UT on campus, and you want to commute less than 30 minutes, that's going to anchor you down to certain areas of town. If you want to be within 15 minutes of Costco, that's going to anchor you down to a certain area. Or maybe you just want the cheapest possible option in East Tennessee, then you're going to have a totally different search parameter. So, get clear on location. And some people, they do come here, maybe they'll travel around, they'll drive around, they'll see it first, and then they go sight unseen when it comes to actually buying the house. Some people never have set foot in Tennessee until they move into their house. So anything of those is possible. It's just you deciding what would be best for you. Now, if you're tossing up between like Arkansas, North Carolina, or Tennessee, like, you probably want to go visit those areas. If you're retiring here and you're thinking like, oh, East Tennessee is going to be, flat and, have 10 inches of snow in the winter, like, no, it's not those things. So just do your research in terms of like what you actually want. Now, if you're moving here for a job, I think it's actually easier because you're going to be anchored by where that job is located. So you don't have as many options, because I think sometimes the more options that we have, the more confused we get. So I definitely think it is easier when you're looking for a specific location based on your commute to your new job. However, I've had a ton of people that have moved here sight unseen, they're retiring here, and like maybe I've had a couple instances where I've worked with clients' parents. So clients that moved here and now their parents are following them. Well, they want to be close to their grandkids. They want to be close to their children. So that's another just anchor in terms of location. I just think the more clear you can be about exact location, the better. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, again, an agent can help you do that. An agent that knows the area can tell you like, hey, you wouldn't like this area. Hey, this area is great. This area could be good if you want to be close to the lake. This area is great if you want to be in walking distance to the post office, whatever. So that is a good opportunity also to get with agents and ask your questions. Now, once you know kind of your timeline, your goal, and you've narrowed down your location, and maybe you've had an agent help you with those things, you are coming to that place of being ready to make offers. However, before you can make an offer, you need to have a pre-approval. Technically, by contract, you don't have to have a pre-approval in order for your offer to be accepted. However, listen to the words coming out of my mouth. Without a pre-approval, most sellers and listing agents, so the agents that represent their sellers, are not going to take you seriously without a pre-approval letter or a proof of funds. When I say proof of funds, I mean like a bank account that has, like say you're buying cash, you have proof that you have that money in your bank account. If you are, whatever the situation is, you need a proof of funds of some sort, and that could be a pre-approval letter. But also that pre-approval letter is going to let you know what you're pre-approved for. Now, some people are buying based off what that letter says. Other people are buying based off how much they want their monthly payment to be. So you might have a pre-approval letter for $330,000, but maybe you want a mortgage payment of less than $1,500. So maybe you're not going to buy a house. I'm just making up these numbers. So maybe you're not going to have a house where your payment is over $1,500, which means maybe you're anchored at $200,000. So get your pre-approval, which tells you your buying power, but also make sure to talk with your lender about what your mortgage payment all in is going to be, including your monthly like homeowners insurance, your taxes, all that stuff. So keep that in mind when you are thinking about your pre-approval. Not only what you are pre-approved for, but also do you actually want that kind of a mortgage payment? So those are things to be certainly asking when you talk to your lender. So once you have your pre-approval, at that point, you are good to go to make offers. At this point, you can now make an offer. You are a legitimate buyer. A seller knows that they're not taking a risk by, basically getting under contract with you because you have a document that states this person is a legitimate buyer. They can afford this home. So pre-approval, you got to have it. Now, once you have done that, if you do not have a real estate agent that you're working with, you got to find one, because if you're going to be buying sight unseen, you could theoretically go with the listing agent. But the thing is that, like for every house. So if you do not want to have your own agent, I think it's a very poor strategy, because remember, the listing agent is working for the seller themselves. And if you're going to be wanting to tour 20 different houses sight unseen, then you're going to be using 20 different agents in the process. And in that process, you're going to be recalibrating that agent every time. When you're buying sight unseen, you want somebody that you trust, somebody that you know is going to tell you the truth, and somebody that knows your goals, your plans, and is working specifically for you, for your best interest. They are serving you as your agent. So you can absolutely call the person on the sign. And as a listing agent and me, I'm like, yeah, call me. But when you're buying sight unseen, I think you need your own agent, because that person is working for you. They are going to be calibrating to what you want, what you need. They're going to know your goals, and they're going to specifically search for those things for you. So at this point, you got your plan, you got your timeline, you got your goals, and you got your pre-approval. And now you officially hire an agent. Now, at this point, when I say hire an agent in the state of Tennessee and actually pretty much everywhere, you do not pay an agent a fee upfront. Technically, the agent is paid when you purchase the home by your money, but it's the proceeds of the seller. So I'm saying that because there's some like litigation over like actually who paid the commission or whatever. So technically, a buyer's agent commission comes out of the proceeds of the seller. So a seller sells that house for $300,000. A portion of those proceeds, that commission gets split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. So unless you are in a state or in a place where a buyer's agent is charging you a commission because maybe they're saying that, they need a certain amount of commission. If they don't get that, then you as the buyer are responsible for the difference. Like for the most part, like all of this is iffy, but for the most part, you are not paying a buyer's agent commission fee. It comes out of the proceeds. So just keep that in mind as well. A little bit of a tangent, but I get that question quite often. So that being said, now that you've committed, you've got your pre-approval, you've got your agent. Now, at this point, if you are not already, you may have already started receiving listings like when you first started talking with an agent. By the time you commit to an agent though, hopefully that agent is sending you properties. Now, typically how I do this is people give me a list. Maybe we talk over the phone. They send me an email after we talk over the phone about their wish list, their must-haves. Now, a must-have is something like, I must have 2 bathrooms. That's a must. A want is like, I want an oversized deck with a pergola. Okay, see the difference? Like 2 bathrooms versus I would like an oversized deck with a pergola. And here's how you tell kind of the difference between a must and a want. A must, could this be something that the average person could put into the MLS, so the multiple listing service where agents put listings? Could this be something that an agent could check a box and if you searched it, it would pop up? So that would be like a garage, attached or detached, number of bedrooms, square footage, acreage, that kind of stuff that is searchable by a database. An oversized deck with a pergola is not. Now you could put a back deck. Does it have a pergola? Probably not. So think about like, what are your bare minimums? Once you know your bare minimums, we work from there. So especially with sight unseen, I tend to set my auto searches pretty broad. So what I was saying is, you tell me your parameters, your musts. I set you up on an auto search to receive searches the minute they hit the market. Now, people ask me this. Well, I'm always on Zillow. Okay, that's great. Zillow does not syndicate automatically with MLSs. So sometimes, even my own listings, I've had a property list through the MLS on a Friday. It does not show up as for sale on Zillow until Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, especially if that seller has ever tampered with, I don't want to say tampered with, but if the seller has ever changed settings in Zillow, what I tend to find is that those houses show up later on Zillow. Realtor.com does syndicate with MLSs, so that's actually more real-time data than what you're going to find on Zillow. I do understand that Zillow is a better user experience, and that's why people like Zillow, because it's more user-friendly. So Zillow is great. If you want real-time auto updates, auto search is the way to go, because that's going to tell you if something pops up. It's going to tell you when something comes back on market. It's going to tell you when there's a price change. So keep that in mind. So what I do is set my people up to receive an auto search via email, because I also do it auto search because half the time I'm not driving for 4 hours at showings or whatever. So I'm not always constantly refreshing the MLS because I'm in my car, right? So to get the most up to date, typically I set people up on auto searches unless they have a very, very specific need or want, where they only want like a 2010 to a 2012 build with a detached garage, but a 2009 could be possible. Like, do you see what I'm saying? So usually we set it up pretty broad with your bare minimums, 3 bed, 2 bath, whatever. Or if you're like, I don't want a house older than 1980, then I'll cap it at 1980, everything 1980 and newer. So essentially we set up your parameters, you begin to receive listings. Now, this is where the magic of sight unseen happens. Once you begin to receive those listings, now you are going to think, oh, do I want Haley or whoever your agent is to go and video this property for you? A couple things about this. Video. Do you want to be FaceTiming? Do you want to be live? Or do you want recordings? My suggestion is recordings, because you can go back and watch those recordings. Now, you could obviously record your FaceTime, but also be mindful of like the agent's time in this, because if you're FaceTiming, sometimes you can just get on a rabbit hole as you FaceTime. And you don't even need that. So usually what happens is I will go record, and then I will send a summary video about the house, and then we will discuss the house if someone wants to make an offer. FaceTime works fine. Just know like what you prefer. So, and as you're going about that process, some things to do before you send your agent out to record a property or to FaceTime a property is have your agent check the property disclosures. So property disclosures, for example, in the state of Tennessee will tell you, is it gas or electric? How old is the roof in most cases? Are there any major flaws with the property? Sometimes you can get like updates. So sometimes sellers will include updates that they've made. Sometimes sellers will include a floor plan. So sometimes sellers will include a survey. So have your agent check the disclaimers, the disclosures, and see what additional information is available. Second of all, go to Google Maps and type in this house that you're interested for your agent to maybe go tour. Go to Google Maps and type it in. Now, what are you looking for? Does this house back up to a landfill? Does this house back up to a railroad track? Does this house back up to a school? Does this house back up to, name whatever thing you don't want to be next to? Or is the neighbor's yard like this? There's no yard. So go to Google Maps. I have some that are extreme Google Mappers, and you know who you are if you're watching this. They take that little man, plop him down, and they walk up and down the streets. And I had someone find a hole in a fence, and she was like, what's that hole for? Well, they decided they wanted to see the house. I went and toured the house, and the hole has since been closed up. They put new fencing. She thought maybe this was like an entrance for like the neighborhood cats. Anyways, be as sleuthy as you want, okay? Zoom out, see what's close. See, like, is there a park that you want nearby? Are you gonna just see all the things on Google Maps, and then decide, once you've looked at the disclosures, once you have checked HOA documents, so if you're worried about restrictions, like get those. And once you've Google mapped it, at that point, then you say, hey, please go check out this house. Now, as you get more familiar with the area, you probably don't need to do as much of that research, but if there's gonna be something, I would say at a minimum, go to Google Maps and just check, make sure there's not a railroad or whatever, a landfill, etc., right next door, or that you're not underneath the airport, which maybe you don't care about. Some people don't care about that, but I'm just saying, for me, I don't wanna be underneath the airport. I live off Chapman Highway. I don't wanna be underneath I-40, and I don't wanna be next to Chapman Highway. So like for me, road noise would be a deal killer. Like it's not gonna happen. So check those things. Then once you've checked all that, at that point, now you say, hey, Haley, whoever, I would love for you to go tour this property. At which point you either set up a time for her to go see it for you to FaceTime, or she or he will schedule to go see it. I'm like, and then the tour happens. So from that point, we see the listing. We go record it, we FaceTime it. And also there may be some things for you that are very important. So this comes back into this goal setting, and maybe this hasn't come up yet, but you start thinking, oh, I have an oversized train that needs a specific size room. True story. So I had some clients who he has a train table that he's been working on for 30 years, and it's huge, like huge. Okay. Ginormo. Like not only is it huge, you cannot turn it on its side. It's like a foot thick. It's got like, it needs to be in climate control. Like it's got needs. Okay. Also, you had to be able to move it in and out of the house, like I said, without turning it totally horizontal or totally vertical. Yep. So anyways, that being said, we I took my measuring tape with me for showings, and I measured not only rooms, but also entryways. Like, we measured angles for entryways to see if like the trigonometry, if the geometry of it would work. So, do you have an oversized train table? Do you have special needs for your dogs? Like maybe your dogs cannot walk down deck steps. Maybe you need a ramp. Maybe you need a single story. Maybe you need so all these little things about how you live, keep that in mind as well. Is this house going to do what you need it to do beyond just 3-bedroom, 2-bath? So if you have a super specific need, then you want to let your agent know that. So she or he can look out for those things while they're actually in the house. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, think about dogs, entries and exits. Like if you're thinking, okay, well, I need to be able to have a dog door to the backyard, but maybe there is no exit to the backyard or whatever. Keep that in mind as well. Like what do you need in terms of livability and access for you, your animals, whatever. Okay, so all of that goes on during the actual showing, the videoing of it. And then I just want to point out that as you get further along in the process, give your agent feedback. So if you tend to be a certain way, like maybe your husband is just worried about like the space itself, but you're really worried about, can I actually cook in that kitchen? Then have your agent really know, like, that's really important to me. I need you to talk to me about like how much space is between the island and the kitchen sink. Can I wash the pots in the kitchen sink? Can I sit people? How many people could sit at the island? Where would the kitchen table go? Another thing is like, how big is your furniture? Maybe you have a antique furniture set and it's huge or whatever, although antique furniture is not big, but you know what I'm saying. Like, what do you need? And then let your agent know that. So as you're looking at houses, she can say specifically to you, hey, that's not going to fit here, or it will fit, or I don't think you would like this because you don't like tile in the bedroom, so this has tile, or whatever. Ideally, you get someone who's going to tell you straight up if it stinks, is the floor uneven. Stuff that you can't see in a video is also what you're wanting your agent to tell you. You don't want to, like, whenever I'm doing this with clients, I never want somebody to walk into a house and be like, what the? You didn't tell me about this. So the goal with that video is that no questions left unturned. No questions left behind. Are the windows new? Are they foggy? Uneven floors are a huge one. Cracked tile, carpet that's like, needs to be pulled, whatever. And when I'm doing these recordings, again, my goal is to say, this is exactly how this house is. These are the pros. These are the cons. This is stuff I noticed. Maybe you don't care, but I did notice the floor was uneven. I did notice that the basement stinks. I did notice that, the bathroom faucets are rusty. I did notice that the tub is scratched. I did whatever. The wallpaper's peeling. The paint's peeling. The doorways are dirty. Like whatever. Whatever it is, you want to know all those things in these videos. Now, at this point, your agent goes and records, and even before she gets to like the kitchen, you're like, this is the house. Oh, this is the one, okay? And you can tell, you just know, you can hear in her voice, she's like, oh my gosh, this is the one, whatever. She doesn't tell you, but you just know, okay? So you get through the tour, you watch it all, and you decide, this is the house for me. Let's put in an offer. Awesome. First of all, obviously, tell your agent. Number 2, your agent is going to find out if there are standing offers. Now, in Knoxville, in East Tennessee, things are moving very quickly. So you want to know, first of all, whether or not is there an offer on the table, and your agent is going to ask, and hopefully the other agent responds. Then from there, depending on what that answer is, you put in an offer. Now, the more recent it is on the market, so say it just got listed an hour ago, like, don't be lowballing those people. I just got listed an hour ago, and they're going to be like, are you serious? Just want to put that out there. Now, obviously, your agent is going to advise you, okay? But The longer on market, usually, typically, the more give you have when it comes to price, contingencies, etc. So just keep that in mind. Now, depending on the property, your offer is super dependent on the property itself. Now, things that probably aren't going to change too much are your closing date, because if you're clear on your goals when you want to move, like your closing date is going to be specific. Now, if you are really like, this is the house for me, then you will find out what kind of closing date that the sellers want, which I actually always ask that anyways, just to see. So if we already know that that might be a point of contention in the offer, then we try to let that not be a make or break deal. So anyways, get as much information as you can about what's already standing, what the sellers want, and if there's anything specific beyond closing date that they specifically want included. So for example, maybe there are some details on the MLS listing where it's like the curtains do not convey. Just for the sake of looking thorough, it's a great idea for that stuff to be included in your offer, because it's like, oh, we read what you want, we want to align with what you want, we really want this house. Like, I don't want to say you're kissing, you know what I'm saying, but you kind of are, okay? Because if this is the one, you got to go for it. You got to be aggressive, you got to go. So your agent will help you craft that. Other things you put in the offer include, like, obviously the address, things that stay, the refrigerator, washer, dryer, whatever stuff that stays or that you want to ask for. You put the type of financing you have. Is it a loan? If it is a loan, what type of a loan? If it's cash, you put cash. Is it contingent on appraisal? You also have who's paying closing costs. So all of that stuff you would have already talked with your lender about, as well as your agent about. Then you also have your inspection. On your offer, you say whether or not you're going to do an inspection for one, and then there's two parts to inspection. One is the actual inspection period, and one is the resolution period. During an inspection period, say your inspection period is 7 days, okay? That would be 7 days from the day you get under contract, essentially. Now, the timelines, like, your agent is going to guide you on this, but this is just for the sake of example. Say you do 7 days of an inspection period. That means you have 7 days to perform any inspections that you want. General home inspection, termite inspection, radon monitor tests, gauge, mold samples, septic, whatever. Well, depending on loan type, like if you're doing a VA, you're gonna have to have that well sample done, etc. So that being said, you have 7 days, just as an example for what I'm talking about. It could be 10, it could be 7. You're gonna gauge that, as well as, like, if there are other offers on the table and you wanna be aggressive, but you absolutely want to do an inspection, you're gonna use that inspection period as a lever. So for example, say this is a house you really, really want, but you definitely wanna have an inspection. Maybe your agent goes ahead and sets up an appointment for this house, like, the next day. So that way, when you submit the offer, your agent can say, listen, I already have an inspection appointment bookmarked for tomorrow. Like, let's get this done. Now, that's if you are wanting to be, like, super aggressive, whatever. Okay, so you have your inspection period. Then the second piece of the inspection is what we call a resolution period. Now, in the state of Tennessee, this inspection period allows you, for any non-cosmetic reason, so say that inspection comes back and the house is falling in, then within the inspection period, you are able to terminate the contract, and depending on your terms for your earnest money, get your earnest money back. Now, this is, like, note that I'm telling you how this works in terms of overall generalities. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Like, I am a real estate agent in the state of Tennessee, but I don't know what offer you put down on the table, right? So just kind of keep this in mind. This is extremely general. You have your inspection period, which is basically your time to do any inspections, assess the situation, and see if the house is in good enough shape for you to move forward, okay? Now, the resolution period is when you negotiate repairs. Once you start negotiating repairs, you automatically go into this resolution period. Now, say someone says, well, they're gonna sell their house as is. What they are saying is you can do your inspections, but they are not going to have a resolution period with you. They are not gonna negotiate price. they're not going to negotiate any repairs. So as is means, yeah, you do the inspection, but you are not getting negotiations when it comes to actual repairs. Now, that being said, keep in mind, I have had the case where my buyers want to be super aggressive. So we put the offer in, we do the inspection, but on that offer, we excluded this. So we just said we are waiving any repair negotiations. We are going to do an inspection. The inspection came back and the electrical was like 30 years old and the house could have caught on fire any minute. Now at that point, my person was like, I cannot front the bill to replace the entire electrical system. The sellers came back and were like, oh shoot. So they actually gave money off, even though we had said we were not going to negotiate. So all of this is amendable to a point, but I want to say this. If you are wanting to be super aggressive, if there are multiple offers on the table, if the house is newer, and if you are comfortable with it, typically to be competitive, you only do your inspection period and you leave off this repair negotiation. Now, again, that's all flexible. However, know yourself. If you're going to get that inspection report back and you're like, no, they need to fix this stuff, then you need to include a negotiation period. So this is kind of a tangent, and this actually applies to anyone that's buying a house. But I just want to tell you that like these two are super important pieces of your offer and then out of the actual negotiation. So anyways, all that to say, you've got your inspection period and your resolution. This is all part of your offer. You put your names, how they will be on the deed. You put any other special stipulations. Maybe maybe the sellers want a lease back. So you're going to put that in the offer. So that's where you close and you allow them to stay for a certain amount of time that you agree upon. Maybe you need to sell your house in order to buy this house. Maybe you need whatever you need, you're going to include that in special stipulation. So that would be things like a home sale contingency, a temporary occupancy for the seller once you close, or maybe you are wanting to occupy the house before. Maybe it's vacant and you need to go ahead and move in, but you can't, whatever. So all of that is, it's all fluid. Maybe also you want to put an escalation clause. Maybe this house is listed at $330. You want to come in at $345. You know there's multiple offers and the most you would pay is $370. But you don't want to go straight to $370. So maybe you do an escalation clause. So all of these are all things that would be included on your offer and again are crafted to the house specifically. Okay, so now I'm like, have I given you too much information? It's all specific to the house and your situation and what you feel comfortable about. So that's the offer process. Also on the offer, you're going to say how much time does the seller have to respond, or what we call an expiration. When will this offer expire? So a couple things here. When you're in a multiple offer situation, typically the seller is going to have put out a time that's like the seller is accepting offers through 8 p.m. Monday and will respond by 11 a.m. on Tuesday. So your deadline on your offer is going to be 11 a.m. on Tuesday because they're going to take offers through that Monday or whatever. So that is when you're in a multiple offer situation and a seller has disclosed that. Now, bear in mind that if that's the case, number one, you're going to get one chance to make this offer, or maybe you have a change of heart in that process and you update the offer, but pretty much they want you to submit your best and final offer. So that's something to keep in mind. Also keep in mind that a seller can accept an offer at any time, which is why it is best if you want to make an offer on this house to get your offer in when you want to make that offer. Do not wait to that deadline. Go ahead and get your offer in. And then if your agent may say, hey, how's our offer looking? And the other agent may be like, well, not great. Then you might come back and say, well, we want to submit something different. Okay. If you put an offer with a 2-hour deadline and they don't respond to you, you don't have an offer on the table. Some people like to play hardball when it comes to putting expirations. Make sure you know seller circumstance because, for example, if you have sellers that don't have email and you put a 2-hour window on that, they're not even probably going to see the offer because someone has to go in person. So just keep in mind circumstance, situation, and I would say just keep that in mind, and your agent can advise you on this. Something else I forgot about that you put in your offer is your earnest money. And a lot of times people are like, well, what is your earnest money? Earnest money is basically like you saying, I've got skin in the game. This could be, depending, again, this totally depends on the situation. Are there multiple offers? I've seen some sellers that are asking for non-refundable earnest money, which means you're not getting it back, period. So I'll just be very careful with that. But it really just depends. Again, your agent or I will advise you on this. So that's just something else that you would put in your offer. And then a lot of times people think like you cut that check as soon as you make your offer. No money is exchanged. No earnest money check gets cut until you are actually under contract. Okay. So fast forward, we submit the offer, you get a call. Congratulations, your offer is accepted. Woo-hoo. So now you are under contract. And now the clock starts ticking. And your agent will help you. Like, don't stress your agent. This is your agent's job, is to keep everything, the timeline working, to make sure you meet all your deadlines, all your performance deadlines within that contract. Your agent is there to help you make sure that stuff gets done, help you to schedule your inspection, help you to schedule any inspections, whether that's radon, general home inspection, termite, whatever, pool, if there's a pool, whatever. And then also we'll advise you on where to send your earnest money, who to make the check out to. Do you need to mail it? Do you need to wire it, etc.? It is important also at this time to start thinking about, when did you put a closing date on that offer? Oftentimes with sight unseen, this means you're not even going to be at closing. You're going to be signing far and away, not in a closing office in Tennessee. So if that is the case, you want to make sure that your agent knows that you will not be in person during closing. Now your agent's going to ask you this, but I'm just saying, keep in mind that you want to go ahead and start thinking out in advance what your plan is, if you're going to be in person or not. So while all the inspections going on, etc., you get your inspection report back, you look at it, maybe you were going to ask for repairs, you talk with your agent, you submit your repair proposal, sellers, and you go back and forth, you come to an agreement. So now you're through your inspection period, you're going to have your appraisal if you're financed, and your lender is going to order that appraisal. You will pay for that appraisal, but your lender orders it. It's done by a third party. And that appraiser comes out, does their appraisal inspection to do the valuation of the home. You wait maybe 10 to 14 days, you get that report back. And once you're through appraisal, say the value is good. In other words, it is at whatever you are under contract to purchase it at. Maybe you're under contract to buy it for $305. The appraisal comes in at $305. Oh, happy day, all is well. Now, if it comes under, you've got 3 days, and this is just another negotiation point to come to an agreement with the seller about the final purchase price. So again, that's just something that we do in the process. In the midst of all this, you are submitting documents to your lender, you're going through underwriting, all of that process is happening. So this is like all under contract stuff. There's the actual like inspection, appraisal, blah, 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 but then also the lender requirements as well happening. And then while that's all happening, you've got title, and title is checking the title search, making sure that it's clean title, that there's no issues with ownership or whatever, that there isn't a survey that is needed or whatever. Title does their thing. Title is also who is going to arrange your closing and where you will close. So the seller will close with the title company and the buyer will close with the title company. Now you could close with 2 different title companies. I think it's annoying. Just pick one, just go with it, okay? Because I think it's easier for everyone involved. Now, title needs to know that you're not going to be closing in person. They will arrange for you to have a mobile notary, especially if you are going to be having a lender. You can't just e-sign the paperwork, everything has to be notarized. And your lender needs to know that as well, so they can get your lending packet to title. Title can get it in order, and then they can send it to the mobile notary. You will sign on the day of closing, and you will be closed. So that's kind of like, I'd say all that because if you're not going to be in town, you got to let people know so they can make arrangements for you. Now, in the process of underwriting, appraisal, inspections, and that whole process, your agent is also going to be getting together for you utility companies. Who are the utility companies? Where do you need to go to get those changed over? How can you get those changed over? Who are those? So typically you'll call that utility company and see what their process is. Sometimes some companies will only let you do so once you have your official, like you've closed on the property. Some will allow you to do it based on your purchase and sale agreement, which is the actual bound offer that shows you're under contract. So that's something just to kind of keep in mind as well. Another thing that while you're in this kind of no man's land of under contract to close is to be considering your moving arrangements, to be considering keys. Like if you're not gonna be coming in person, will your agent get the keys? Will your agent put the keys in a lockbox? Like, what does that look like? These are all easy problems to solve. It's just, you got to communicate in order to get them solved. Does that make sense? So anyways, I'm making sure that, so essentially everybody knows how you're closing. Are you going to be in person? Are you not going to be in person? Make arrangements as such. And this can include what happens with the keys. And this includes also utilities, what needs to happen with utilities. Make sure as well that like the seller isn't going to shut off the utilities the day of closing if you are not able to get them turned on the day of closing, because sometimes like water service specifically, they might turn it off and they're not coming back for another week. So just make sure that your agents have coordinated that. So that's just something else to kind of keep in mind. Now, right before closing, we have what's called a final walkthrough. And this is the final walkthrough. This is where your agent will go and check out the property. Now, specifically, if you negotiated repairs, your agent is going to go and make sure this stuff was done, has probably already asked for documentation that it was done, but we'll go and check, make sure the house is still there, obviously. And then check that the repairs were made, the toilet's flushed, the hot water's working, stuff like that. You do not have to do a final walkthrough. You can totally waive it. But a final walkthrough is you saying like, I'm good to go, I'm good to close. On that final walkthrough forms, you have 3 choices. The first choice is I'm waiving my final walkthrough. The second choice is buyer has done the final walkthrough and is satisfied with the condition of the property. And the third is the buyer has done the final walkthrough and is not satisfied, and these things need to be done before closing. So that being said, hopefully there's nothing in that box, because if you put something in that box, you're not closing, okay? Until it's done, essentially. So again, with your agent, you will arrange this. They will help you get this done. Sometimes for me, this one on sight unseen, this looks like, this can be a FaceTime. This looks like a video recording. This looks like me going and checking things out, where I go flush toilets, check the hot water, etc. And sometimes people don't even want it. So usually I at least go through and do a walkthrough myself. And most people don't want to FaceTime. I have done a couple FaceTimes for final walkthroughs, but for the most part, I go check it out, make sure all is well, and especially check when there were repairs involved that they're completed. So all of that is, to whatever you feel comfortable with doing. And then once you have your final walkthrough, usually that's the day of or the day before closing, you are ready to close, sign your papers, sign, seal, delivered. You do your signatures, you get your mobile notary, you FedEx your paperwork back. So just let me explain that for a second. Mobile notary is where a notary meets you, you do your lending paperwork, you sign your name on everything, you sign your name saying that you're gonna pay for this house. If you don't pay your mortgage, you can't stay, all that stuff, right? So you do all of your closing packet. If you are signing far and away with a lender, what's going to typically happen is you must sign on that closing date. Now, some lenders are a little bit more giving on this. Like I recently had one with Rocket Mortgage, and like our closing date was on the 15th, and they allowed them to sign with their notary on the 13th. That's not typical. Typically what happens is the lender requires you to sign on the day of closing. So your paperwork has to be dated on that day. Now, this is why it's important to have a plan ahead of time. But what will happen is your title company is going to work to arrange a mobile notary and or give you the name of someone where you are. So say you're in Arizona, in Scottsdale, and they're gonna tell you, this person in Scottsdale, you need to make an appointment to go and do your notary with them. They will print off all your packets, or you will print them off, whatever title decides. You will get everything notarized, and then you will FedEx it back. Please make sure to make a copy of what you send. just so it's there. Now, the mobile notary will likely do this anyways, but make sure someone's made a copy, taken a picture, or whatever. Keep your tracking number, right? The other thing and the other fold of all this is, what about the Dallas? Okay, so typically with a sight unseen closing, buyers not, and this is even not on sight unseen, maybe you're just not coming in town for the actual closing, you're going to be wiring your money, your down payment, your closing costs, etc. You need to initiate the wire of funds the day before. Now, the title company is going to give you one number and your lender is going to give you another. And sometimes they're a little bit off because of like HOA or whatever. And typically the lender one is going to be the higher number. So I would go with the lender and something might change 20 cents or whatever. The title company will cut you a check back if you've wired too much money, basically. But you want to be thinking also that, okay, well, if I'm closing on Friday and I've got to arrange a mobile notary, I need to have wired my money by Thursday at noon or whatever. So that way the money is there so it can be closed out. The seller can close out, they get the proceeds, and they can move on. So just keep that in mind. Keep in mind also federal holidays. So for example, maybe Monday is MLK and you're closing the following Tuesday. Well, that means you would have need to have wired your money on Friday, right? So just keep that in mind. There's some other like things in this, which we call clear to close. And that is where your lender tells you like, hey, you're clear to close. And that happens a couple of days before closing. You get your closing disclosure. Make sure that you're reading those lender emails because you do have specific deadlines to open that closing disclosure, sign that closing disclosure, 3 days to be exact, in order to actually still close on time. So make sure that you're also like in one accord with your lender, but really everybody on the team. So both agents, title, lender, everyone is working towards that closing date. So sometimes when you're not coming in town, it can be a little bit like, oh, wait, you're not coming in town. Oh, this has to be wired. Oh, right? The other thing I want to just put a bug in your ear about is the amount of money you're wiring. And I just say this because sometimes banks have rules about how much money you can wire per day. So I had a client who, she was buying the house for cash. Her bank had a $100,000 limit per day to wire. She misunderstood what they were saying. She thought they were saying you could only wire $100,000 at a time. Not correct. It was $100,000 like per day. Okay. Well, needless to say, we were a day out from closing, and then the bank was like, no, that's not what we said, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It got worked out. She ended up having to drive 2.5 hours to her bank branch in order to get the funds for this. But just that's another question that sometimes I just want to put a little bug in your ear that if you're going to be wiring significant amounts of money, make sure that your bank, and even actually any amount of money, make sure they don't have weird limits that are going to like keep you from wiring what you need to wire. So anyways, and then once all that happens, you sign the papers and the house is yours and you're gonna love it here in East Tennessee. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you clarity and not confusion. I want to say that this entire process is super specific. So this entire thing, I'm giving you details, but also I'm speaking in broad generalities because a lot of this is very specific to you. But the overall process, get your plan, get your pre-approval, check the houses, commit to an agent at some point in that process, make offers, get under contract process, and close. That is the most simple, probably, explanation of the entire process. This is something that people do all the time. So totally doable and people have great success. So I hope this was helpful and I will see you on the next video.